Okay, moment of truth. I think we're good. How's everybody doing? Sorry it's been a little while since my last video. I was a little under the weather last week and things have been going a little bit slow. I also have been ordering a lot of parts and kind of getting things ready to freshen up this new motor. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern on some of those parts. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and start getting some things cleaned up today. I'm going to try to get some of that last piece of sheet metal off the car that got bent up, and it shouldn't be a big deal. Straighten that back out. And then I'm going to start stripping down the motor that's in the car to go ahead and try to get that out of the frame. And I'll show you around as I go do that. So thanks for watching. Here we go. This is one of those pieces of sheet metal. It was my fault. I left those front bolts up in there as I was dropping this thing, or actually lifting this. So it bent it up a little bit. It's only got 2 more bolts holding it in. Should be able to get that out done and then get it out and hopefully straighten it out real easy.
I really should know by now not to say something's going to be really easy. So those foil-ish sound dampening things were a total pain in the butt to get out. And then I couldn't get the plate out without the exhaust. So I pretty much just had to take the exhaust out, and that took me a little while. So I fought it and fought it and fought it, finally got that out. Then I built a little wood brace to hold the torque tube up. So there you go.
Yeah, so I highly recommend you just remove the entire exhaust system, at least to these back pipes here. I had to remove the muffler anyway. These ones don't need to come out, so I suppose you can just leave those in. But this whole section needs to come out anyway. You have to support the torque tube when you disconnect the motor. So definitely recommend you do that if you're going to take this project on. So the next little trick is going to be the transmission cooler lines here. They don't really need to come out. They don't need to come off. So I just have to figure out how to get them out of the way while I get the motor out of there. I can't really separate the motor from the torque tube with them connected. I plan on doing a transmission service here, so I'm wondering if maybe I should just disconnect them completely, and that way I can just completely separate this whole front section. Probably make my life a lot easier, and so if that's the case, I might just go ahead and do that. Anyway, so there you go. Got to figure out a way to get those apart. This rack is not adjustable as far as height's concerned. So the interesting thing about that is this is pretty high still. So if I were to just pull this out, straight out, right now, it's gonna be interesting trying to get that motor up off of that any higher, even with the cherry picker. This is already pretty high. That was why my original plan was to put the motor on the adjustable racks in the back there. That way, once I pulled it apart, I could lower those and then therefore lower the motor. It'd be easier. But I got scared in the end because I didn't think that section was going to be, well, I don't know, it would have been strong enough. But I was just a little worried about that, all the weight up here being on those wooden pallet things. So anyway, there you go. I got to figure out how I'm going to pull this off. So we'll keep working on this.
At this point, I realized I was just going to have to take the transmission lines out. So I disconnected the coolant lines from the actual transmission, let that drain a little bit. It didn't drain too much fluid, but let that drain, and then I was able to try to get those out of the way. So I took the rest of the torque tube bolts out, and at that point, I was pretty much ready to separate this thing, since nothing else was holding them together, and those lines should be out of the way.
Okay, so I think I've got everything disconnected at this point. The bell housing to the torque tube is completely disconnected. The transmission lines are connected to the front part now, and they're disconnected completely from this rear section. I put these straps down here just to hold the frame down onto this thing, just in case something crazy happens. I don't need this thing toppling forward, ruining what little bit of stuff I'm keeping on here. So let's make sure safety first. I got a strap on each side. The only thing now is there's straps that are holding these 2 carts together. I'm gonna undo those and then try to see if I can't break these 2 things apart.
So now I'm ready to get this thing pulled apart, but it fights me and fights me and fights me, of course. These transmission lines it's the hard aluminum line, so I didn't want to crush them because I don't have other ones and I don't want to have to buy new ones. So they're kind of pinched in between the exhaust manifold there, the header adapter, and then the torque tube. So it's a really narrow space. They got to both fit through there. So I was being really gentle with them, trying to make sure that I didn't crush them. Also trying to make sure that I wasn't doing anything wrong other than, like the torque tube wasn't binding somewhere. So I was trying to be pretty slow and methodical about it, and then just try to move those lines out of the way. But they fought me as much as they could fight. So I finally eventually just kind of pried them a little bit out of the way. They're not with a pry bar or anything like that, with just my hand, but I was finally able to just kind of force them out of the way, and then I was able to pull this thing apart. I loosened those straps a little bit just to make sure the engine wasn't being pulled down onto the torque tube and kind of creating more bind. But eventually, I was able to finally get those transmission coolant lines out of the way and get this thing separated. As frustrating as it was, it finally worked out.
Okay, well that took a little doing. The transmission lines, as much as I got them out of the way, they still were in the way. But I believe at this point, we have two separate things. Okay, bell housing for the torque tube, engine, they're disconnected. All right, so this should make things a little bit easier, I think, because I was talking earlier about not being able to, without bashing my head like I've done 10 times today. Now I'm thinking I only need to get the engine up just slightly, and then I could pull it out the back, or pull the frame out from underneath it that way, because everything else out here is fairly clear. So should be able to lift it up just a little bit off the motor mounts, and then just separate the two pieces there. So there you go. In the next episode, we should have the engine out, or we'll be completely freshening up the new engine. Either way, thank you very much for tuning in. I know there was a lot of time lapse today, but there was a lot of just thinking and looking rather than talking. So anyway, I'll put on some awesome music or something. I don't know, whatever. Thanks again for watching. If you like it so far, please like and subscribe, and see you next time.